The escalating conflict in the Middle East is raising concerns for beyond the region itself, with investors closely watching how the instability could ripple through global markets. Energy prices, shipping routes, and geopolitical tensions are all contributing to uncertainty, and markets have been reacting in real time as the situation evolves. For investors, moments like this can raise difficult questions about risk, stability, and where the global economy may be heading next. To help break this down and what it could mean for financial markets and for investors here at home, I'm joined now by Brennan Caldwell of Caldwell Securities Limited. Thanks so much for joining us.
Wyatt, good to be here.
Of course, good to talk to you again. Let's just start out with kind of to what extent does the conflict going on in the Middle East right now pose a risk to global financial markets? And perhaps more specifically, how do investors typically assess these types of uncertainties?
Well, as the great philosopher Omar Khayyam wrote, meh. It right now it's affecting the markets because they needed to have something to react to. I don't want to make little of the fact people have died, schools have been bombed, countermeasures have been deployed, and there's a lot of noise and smoke and violence. But when it comes to the markets, they were looking for an outlet. They were looking for a reason to have a bit of a correction. And I'm not saying mission accomplished, because that would be foolish in the Middle East. But the market has had a correction. It was down quite a bit on Monday. Toward by the mid afternoon, it was bounced back considerably. Nasdaq even crossed over the positive into positive territory. It does. I mean, going back to the seminal political event of my professional career was 9/11. And as I've said on this channel before, the market closed 2001 higher than it did on September the 10th, 2001, the day before 9/11. So these kind of corrections, all political issues, do have a moment in the sun, the 15 minutes of fame, to borrow from Andy Warhol. But I do not think it is going to last. I do not think it is going to do sustainable damage to the markets or the financial world in general.
And if we look at this kind of more broadly, one thing that President Trump is always concerned about is the state of the markets, and certainly he takes pride in announcing whenever, different stocks are at different prices, and he often touts that as a success of his administration. But of course, what we're seeing more broadly now in the United States, and of course the ripple effects in Canada, are things like the price of oil and gasoline going up, and many people are attributing it to what's happening in the Middle East. How concerned are you that the cost of living for kind of the average everyday person, whether it be in Canada or the United States, could be impacted as a result of this?
Probably, and the cost of living has already been impacted. I think the inflation numbers coming out of the central banks and the statistics, Canada, are low. The statistics both here and south of the border.
Hmm.
But everything that I've ever thought is a bug, everything I thought was a mistake, everything I've thought is a bug is somebody else's feature.
Right.
And the president has more or less said that higher energy prices are a small price to pay. Not to say I believe in this action. I think it is, again, this is politically a very technical political term, insane. We, the West, have not been publicly in the business of picking off world leaders, no matter how odious,
Yeah.
in a very, very long time. In my entire lifetime, we were not in the business of doing that, and we never trumpeted it publicly. People are describing this as a war, including the president's describing this as a war. It is not a war. It may be a punitive action. It may be an effort at regime change, although it's a bit of the case of meet the new boss, same as the old boss. But it is not a war. To have a war, like you saw the previous segment, you were talking about Russia and Ukraine, where you actually have boots on the ground and are taking over territory, that's a war. And this is, I don't know what this will end up being, but I think any fool can start a war, but who knows how it ends itself up. So this is not a boots to the ground war. This is chaos on the hoof.
Yeah, well, many people might argue too that we're on the verge of it, given that the United States just yesterday, the White House press secretary said that they weren't ruling that out. So I think a lot of people definitely concerned. But I do kind of want to go back to this idea of assets and kind of how that's being positioned in the context of this. How, from your perspective, should investors think about kind of positioning their asset allocations and investing in safe haven assets when you are in a period of such uncertainty, instability, et cetera?
Have safe haven assets when everything looks good. But I'm not when in times of chaos, when the market corrects over a political, non-fundamental issue, and that can be anything from 9/11 to COVID to this present conflict. Whenever the market's correcting over something that isn't inherently fundamental to do with the business of business, then that is most typically a buying opportunity. I am not going to put a flag in the ground and say the market's gone as low as it's going to go and it's not going to go any lower. But to the extent that people have assets to invest right now, no, I wouldn't say put all your chips, go all in on a Monday or a Tuesday because it's going straight up from here. But if you'd ever thought of investing and were worried the market was too high, put in 25%, put
Yeah.
in 10%, put in a little bit into assets that can grow. Because once you've done a little bit, one of two things is going to happen. Either the market's going to go up or it's going to go down.
Yeah.
If it goes up, you'll say, thank goodness I bought a little bit and I'm comfortable buying a little bit more. If it goes down, you'll say, thank goodness I've got 75 or 90% of my assets in reserve. I can put a little bit more in. So you're much more likely to either average up or average down or actually get invested and take advantage of it using dollar cost averaging if you do doing the first step, which is buy just even a little bit.
And with some of these disruptions that are happening right now to some of the shipping routes, in particular in the Persian Gulf region, how vulnerable do you think the kind of global energy system, if you will, is to this geopolitical shock that we're seeing?
I think it's somewhat vulnerable, but I think the geopolitics he's playing is that it's going to matter more to what he considers America's enemies than it's going to matter to the parts of the world he cares about,
Hmm.
which is well America.
Yeah.
Uh, so he's already. I mean, America is already much more energy self-sufficient than it has been in almost any time in its history. It's got all the Canadian energy because our previous prime minister felt there was no business case for getting Canadian energy to blue water. So would that we could sell more overseas.
Yeah.
So it's going to matter much more to China, to Russia, to Iran itself, to even to Europe than it's going to matter to North America. And I think that's the feature, the political calculus that the president and his team are making, cynical as it may be.
And just lastly, about 30 seconds or so, but with some of these kind of geopolitical tensions that we're seeing, obviously they're continuing to escalate into broader trade embargoes. How do you think this could kind of reshape the trade flows and perhaps more specifically impact Canada?
Well, again, Canada has the ability to be a winner if it were able to export its energy. Because, I mean, the world will transition to other than fossil fuels over the
Yeah.
next generation, probably by the time you're my age. But in the interim, fossil fuels is still what powers most of the world. And during these periods of outside exogenous shocks,
Right.
it would be really great if Canada was in the ability, being the safe haven that it is, and the world's only normal petrodollar, to be in a better position to supply the world's energy needs and benefit therefrom.
All right. We will leave it there. Brennan Caldwell, thank you so much.
Thank you, Wyatt.